My husband Mateo is mute. At our wedding, his best friend Catalina spoke his vows for him. After we were married, his mother called me a barren and useless wife, while he just stood there, red-faced, unable to defend me with a single word. When Catalina pushed me down the stairs, I fell to the floor. I saw the blood from my head and felt myself losing our child. Mateo could only make desperate, choked sounds, utterly helpless in the face of the tragedy befalling my health. Everyone told me the same thing. It's hard for him too, Lucia. He's mute. You have to be patient. I believed them completely, until we attended the company gala where everything changed. I left early and found him on the staircase, protecting Catalina from some drunken men. For the first time I heard his voice clear and perfect. "Let her go," he warned, his tone cold and hard. "Or I'll make sure you disappear from this city immediately." Catalina looked at him with sincere adoration and exhaled. "Mateo, you were so brave." Then my husband turned, saw my pale face, and instantly became mute again. His voice only existed for one person, and that person wasn't me, his wife. I stood there petrified, watching his threat dissolve back into those guttural, meaningless sounds I knew so well. His eyes were filled with a clear panic, like a man whose most shameful secret had just been exposed to the world. Catalina's expression faltered, but she recovered quickly. She approached me and took my hand. "Lucia, don't misunderstand. Mateo was just very worried about my situation. That's all it is." She forced the words out, trembling with a false vulnerability in her voice. "You know how he is. He'd do anything I asked." I snatched my hand from her grasp, staring intently at Mateo. He was unable to meet my gaze, his eyes fixed on the floor. A frantic sound choked in his throat as his hands flew in a whirlwind of sign language. "It's not like that, Lucia. Let me explain the whole situation." I watched his long, elegant fingers, the same hands that had clung to the rail of my hospital bed in agony the day I lost our baby. That memory was now a sick joke. A sharp, humorless laugh escaped my lips. I turned around and simply walked away. Mateo tried to reach for me, but I recoiled completely, as if his touch could burn me. "Don't touch me," I said, a coldness in my voice I barely recognized. He froze, and his panic quickly deepened into absolute desperation. Back home, I locked myself in the bedroom. I used to think our silent house was peaceful. Now it felt suffocating. Every corner smelled intensely of lies. A little later, someone knocked on the door. It was Mateo. He didn't try to enter, just dragged his nails across the wood of the door. Once, then twice. It was our private signal for something urgent or a plea. I ignored it. After half an hour, the scraping stopped. I thought he had given up, and a strange sense of relief washed over me. Then my phone vibrated. A call from Catalina. I didn't answer. An immediate barrage of text messages followed. "Lucia, Mateo is gone. He was so upset, and I'm worried he'll do something stupid. He loves you so much. Please don't be angry with him because of me. My cat seems to be sick, and I'm alone and scared. Do you know where Mateo is?" The last message was a tearful voice note, which I ignored. I opened the bedroom door. The living room was empty. Mateo's coat and car keys were gone. On the coffee table lay an open notepad filled with messy scrawls. In a desperate hand were written the words, "Lucia, believe me, I only love you." I stared at the sentence and nausea washed over me. He loved me. Was this his love, running to another woman the moment his lies were exposed? I picked up my phone and dialed a number. "Hello, I need a background check on Mateo Vargas and a woman close to him named Catalina Beltran. I want all the information from the day they met until now." The next day, I went to work as if nothing had happened. Mateo didn't come home. His mother, however, called punctually at her usual time. "Lucia, what have you done to upset Mateo now? Life is hard enough for him being mute. You have to push him to the limit like this. Catalina says you're behaving irrationally. Mateo is at her place right now. You need to go get him immediately." I hung up without a word. That evening, Mateo finally returned, his face etched with exhaustion. Catalina was right behind him, carrying a container of homemade soup. "Lucia, Mateo was so worried you hadn't eaten, so he asked me to bring you this," she said with a sweet smile, as if the scene on the staircase had been a hallucination. My mother-in-law entered right after, took Catalina's hand and glared at me. Look how considerate and attentive Catalina is, and then look at you. You can't even take care of your own husband. If it weren't for Catalina, who knows where Mateo would have ended up last night. Mateo stood there, head bowed, wringing his hands over and over, the perfect picture of a guilty man. I watched the three of them, my heart transforming into a block of emotionless ice. I walked to the dining table, picked up a document and held it out to him. Sign this, please. His mother snatched it from my hand. Sign what? A company document is an urgent matter. Catalina leaned in, concern dripping from her voice. Mateo, don't do anything rash. Lucia is just a little upset right now. She tried to take his hand, but he flinched away sharply. His pleading eyes remained fixed on me. I ignored him and addressed his mother. It's not a divorce. It's related exclusively to work and corporate matters. She huffed but fell silent. Mateo, seemingly trying to soothe Catalina's worry, took the pen and signed quickly. His signature was neat and clean. He looked at me hopefully. Lucia, please don't be angry with me. Okay. I took the document without a second glance. Then Catalina pointed to the emerald bracelet on my wrist. Lucia, that bracelet is beautiful. Was it a gift from Mateo on some occasion? It was my engagement gift. I never took it off. I waited. Mateo froze, then signed rapidly. It was my engagement gift to Lucia. Catalina's face fell with surprise. Oh, it's so beautiful. She looked at Mateo with absolute longing. You've never given me a gift like that. Why not? He hesitated. He glanced at her, then at me. Finally, he took the pen and wrote on the notepad. Lucia, what do you think about lending the bracelet to Catalina for a few days? She has a very important party next week. My heart didn't just break. It disintegrated completely. I stared at those words for 10 whole seconds. Then I smiled, unclasped the bracelet, and held my hand up in the air. Smash! Emerald fragments scattered across the marble floor. My mother-in-law let out a sharp shriek. Catalina gasped, hiding behind Mateo. Mateo jumped to his feet, utterly speechless. Now it's broken, I said with great calm. No one can have it. I went upstairs to pack my clothes. Mateo followed me, signing frantically at the doorway. What the hell is wrong with you? I'll buy you a new one. I ignored him completely. He grabbed my wrist forcefully. Don't you leave this house. I yanked my hand away. Mateo, we're done. Everything we had is over. He staggered, his face pale. I brought my suitcase down as his mother screamed insults at me. I walked straight towards the front door. Mateo blocked my path, his eyes bloodshot. He signed again and again. I'm sorry, really, I was completely wrong. Please don't leave me. I looked at him and found only patheticness in his face. Can your apology bring my son back? He recoiled immediately, as if he'd been slapped. I opened the door and left without another word. Behind me, something shattered, followed by his mother's furious screams. I didn't look back. A few days later, my private investigator handed me a thick file along with several audio recordings. Mateo hadn't been born mute. At the age of 10, a severe fever damaged his vocal cords. It left him completely silent for a year. During that time, he was showered with attention, especially from Catalina. When his voice returned, he chose not to use it. Being mute got him more than speaking ever did. Catalina became the guardian of his best-kept secret. Their twisted, sick bond lasted for 20 years. One of the recordings was Catalina, openly boasting about her power. Mateo isn't really mute. He just can't be bothered to talk to people he doesn't care about. Lucia is just a tool. The Vargas family needed her family's connections. Why else would he have married her? Honestly, it's better that the baby is gone. I was sick of seeing her here. My nails dug deep into my palm. I thought I would tremble with rage, but instead I felt a terrifying total calm. The next day, Catalina called me, sobbing, because my mother-in-law had slapped her and was going to kick her out of the house. Lucia, can you please talk to Mateo for me? He listens to you. I laughed softly without humor. Isn't he at your place right now? Talk to him yourself, or can't you? More loud, dramatic crying. He won't see me. He's not answering my calls. I don't know what else to do. Then you should get on your knees and beg him, I said with utmost coldness. Just like I begged him to save me from the fall the day I lost our baby. She went completely silent and I hung up. A short time later my doorbell rang. It was Mateo looking haggard holding a small cake box. He forced a hopeful smile and signed to me. Lucia, I bought you your favorite cake, the one you love most. I didn't let him into the house. What do you want from me? He seemed startled. He signed urgently. Catalina didn't mean it. She's young and immature. Please don't hold it against her. I'll talk to my mother. You don't have to worry. Mateo, I said, are you here to bring me a cake or to be Catalina's lawyer? The color drained from his face. His hands froze midair. I slammed the door shut. That night, an unknown number sent me a photo of a box from my old storage room. It was the box that held all my baby's things, now thrown next to a dumpster, dirty and completely ruined. Beneath the image was a short, cruel sentence. Things that get in the way go straight to the trash. Blood roared in my ears. I drove immediately to the old house we shared. The storage room was completely ransacked. My son's memories were scattered, trampled and mercilessly destroyed. The wooden rocking horse I had carved was broken in two. I fell to my knees on the cold floor, picking up the broken pieces, sobbing. Then, at that exact moment, Mateo and Catalina arrived. Catalina gasped theatrically. Oh my God, what happened here? Everything was fine when I left the house. Mateo ran towards me. Lucia, don't be like this. Things are broken, we can buy new ones. It's no problem to buy new ones. I looked at him, feeling hatred burning inside me. Shut your mouth. He backed away. Catalina stepped forward, positioning herself between us. Lucia, don't blame Mateo. It must have been a burglar. I threw the broken rocking horse right at her face. You did this, Catalina. I'm going to kill you for this. The wood grazed her cheek, leaving a thin red line. She screamed and immediately jumped behind Mateo. Mateo, I'm so scared. She's completely lost her mind. And instinctively, by pure reflex, Mateo wrapped his protective arms around Catalina, shielding her. Then he turned to me, his eyes cold and filled with judgment. And in that moment I heard his voice again. He hadn't used that voice to say his vows. He hadn't used it to defend me from his mother's insults. He hadn't used it to call for help when I was bleeding in a hospital bed, helpless. But now, for a simple, insignificant scratch on another woman's face, he spoke. 20 years of silence, sharpened like a razor blade, and he plunged it straight into my heart. Apologize to Catalina. Right now. Do it now. The word now echoed like a whip. For an instant, none of the three of us moved. Catalina clung tightly to his shirt, her nails digging into his arm, her eyes wide and wet. The thin red line on her cheek stood out like a badge of martyrdom. My knees were still on the cold floor, my hands full of ruined fabric and memories. My husband looked at me with a voice that had never existed for me. Something inside me finally clicked. I rose slowly from the floor. My legs were trembling, but they were my own. The broken rocking horse lay at my feet. I pushed it aside with the tip of my shoe. No, I said, my voice firm. The silence that followed was heavier and denser than any scream. Mateo looked at me as if I had spoken in a language he couldn't understand. His mouth opened, and for the first time in years of marriage, I saw him hesitate over the words he wanted to use against me. Lucia, he managed to say, and my name in his voice felt alien, like a stranger trying on something intimate. You hurt her. I laughed. It wasn't a pretty laugh. It was raw, harsh, and came from a deep place I didn't know was still alive. You want me to apologize? I asked him. To the woman who pushed me down the stairs, to the woman who threw away my baby's things? His face went completely white with shock. Catalina opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off immediately. Shut up, I said. And the way her mouth snapped shut was the closest thing to satisfaction I had felt. My hands were shaking, but my voice remained steady as I looked at him. The man who stood mute when his mother called me barren. The man who writhed in theatrical agony beside me. The man whose throat strangled sounds he could shape into words whenever he chose. I am not going to apologize, I said. Not to her, and certainly not to you. Behind Mateo, Catalina's eyes darted, calculating her next move. She stepped out from behind him, adopting a soft, wounded expression. "Lucia, please," she whispered weakly. "I know you're hurting, but Mateo is just trying to keep the peace. You know how fragile he is. You know how hard his life has been." I looked at her in disbelief. "Fragile?" I repeated mockingly. "Is that what we're calling 20 years of lies and deceit now?" His mother had now entered the room. Of course she had. She chose that exact moment to find her voice. "That's enough," she shouted furiously. "Lucia, you have completely lost your mind. First you break the bracelet Mateo saved for months to buy. Then you attack Catalina, and now you want to slander my son. You're lucky he ever took pity on a worthless woman like you." I felt an old reflex in my chest that made me want to shrink, to smooth things over, to apologize for existing so loudly. Instead, I said with great calm and authority, "Get out of my house. Now." Her eyes bulged with surprise and anger. "What did you just say?" "You heard me perfectly," I replied. "You too, Catalina. And you, Mateo." He flinched. His hands rose automatically, fingers forming the familiar signs. "Lucia, please, let's talk. We can fix this. Everything can be fixed." But his voice had already betrayed him irreversibly. There was no going back to the false illusion of a mute husband. "Fine," his mother snapped. "We'll leave. But don't think you can just throw my son out and continue living off the Vargas name. You'll come crawling back, begging, before the month is out." "If I ever crawl again," I said, "it will be over your son's dead body." Her gasp echoed down the hall. I didn't mean it literally, but I didn't take it back either. They left in a whirlwind of profound indignation and slamming doors. The house fell silent again, but it was no longer the same calm as before. It was a hollow silence like the one that follows a bomb blast. I stood alone in the ruins of the storage room, surrounded by shredded baby blankets and dirty stuffed animals, and I forced myself to breathe. My phone vibrated in my pocket. A new message lit up the screen from an unknown number. "Your report is ready. We can meet first thing tomorrow morning to review everything." I stared at the text until the words blurred. Then I typed back a reply. "Tomorrow at 9 a.m. I'll be there." That night I couldn't sleep at all. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of cold tea and the open document Mateo had signed days before. The company document his mother had scoffed at. He signed it without reading it, trusting that I was still the naive, silent wife. My lawyer had called it a masterpiece of controlled rage. To me, it just felt like paper and ink, a temporary power that transferred his voting rights in the company to me for the duration of his current medical crisis, certified by the psychiatrist, the same psychiatrist I had insisted he see 6 months ago, the same one who had written in clinical language that Mateo's muteness was functional and entirely voluntary. "You always liked the benefits of being mute," I whispered to the empty room. "Let's see how you like it when it finally costs you something." The next morning, I sat in a glass-walled office across from a sharp-eyed man who slid a thick folder across the table. "Mrs. Vargas," he said, "I've compiled everything. Timelines, records, financial statements, witness declarations, and the audio files, of course, just as you requested." I opened the folder. Catalina's name leaped out at me immediately. It was on receipts and hotel bookings that predated my marriage, and cash transfers from Mateo's personal account. I saw grainy but unmistakable photographs of him laughing out loud, his mouth open mid-sentence in a restaurant. "That's from 3 years ago," the investigator said quietly, "in case you were wondering how long he's been using his voice behind your back." I looked at the date. It was the week I was hospitalized for a severe hemorrhage. He had visited me once for 10 minutes, silent and tense, signing that he was busy. He promised to come back later. He never did. My fingers tightened around the pages until they wrinkled. "And the recordings?" I asked. He pointed to a small black device. "These are the ones you specifically requested. Catalina with her friends, with your mother-in-law, and one with Mateo and Catalina together." "Together?" I repeated, feeling the blow. He nodded. "In front of a clinic 2 months before your miscarriage. They weren't being careful," he told me, "though it wasn't strictly necessary." "Thank you," I said, my voice flat. "Send the invoice to my personal email." When I left his office, the world felt more fragile. No one on the street knew that I had spent the night reading the fine print of his impending downfall. I went home, showered, put on a simple black dress and low heels, braided my hair and put on discreet earrings. For the first time in months I didn't wear the emerald bracelet. It was where it belonged, in pieces. Then I picked up my phone and called the company's legal department. "Good morning," I said. "This is Lucia Vargas. I am invoking the emergency clause in the power of attorney Mateo signed last week. I am calling a meeting of the board of directors." There was a stunned pause on the other end of the line. "May I ask the agenda?" "Yes," I said. "The agenda is the removal of Mateo Vargas as acting CEO on medical and ethical grounds." The words felt unreal coming out of my mouth. The lawyer cleared his throat. "Understood. I will send out the notifications immediately." That night, the boardroom was filled with important people. I sat at the head of the table. Mateo walked in, flanked by his mother and Catalina. Only his eyes betrayed him. His mother approached my seat. "Lucia," she hissed under her breath, "I don't know what game you're playing, but you will not humiliate my son in front of his board. If this is about your tantrum over the bracelet, we'll talk later." "Mrs. Vargas," I said calmly, "as of 2 days ago, I am no longer your daughter-in-law. Please address me as Ms. Lu." She blinked in surprise. "What are you talking about?" I slid a sealed document across the table. "Final decree of divorce. Mateo signed the settlement 3 weeks ago. It was attached to the company document. He was too busy to read carefully." "You tricked him," his mother whispered in rage. "You tricked my son. You witch." "I followed the law to the letter," I said firmly. "If he chooses to sign documents without reading them, that's not a disability, it's arrogance." "Ms. Lu," one of the board members said, "perhaps we should begin. The markets don't appreciate this kind of uncertainty." "You're absolutely right," I said. "Let's begin." Mateo sat in his chair. His hands moved quickly, signing. "This is illegal. This is a trap. You can't do this to me." "The first item on the agenda," I said, "is Mateo's current capacity to lead this company. Before we discuss that, I want you all to hear something." I placed the recorder in the center of the table and pressed play. Catalina's voice filled the room. "Mateo isn't really mute. He just can't be bothered to talk to people he doesn't care about. Lucia is just a tool." The words hung there, horrible. Then I pressed play on the second recording. Mateo's voice was clear and confident. "You worry too much," he was laughing. "They buy the whole mute act. The investors, the board, my mother. They don't expect me to respond in meetings, so I can let them lay out all their positions first. I have all the power and none of the responsibility. Why would I ever give that up?" One of the members swore under his breath. "If it's not genuine," I finished for him, "then you have a problem. A serious one." Mateo shot to his feet, his hands slamming the table. "Stop," he shouted. The sound echoed. There it was. His voice. "You set me up. I presented the truth," I said. "What you did with it is your choice." "Mateo," Catalina whispered. He shook her off. From a corporate standpoint, one of the directors said, "This creates significant liability. It's fraud and investor deception." "I am not here to send Mateo to prison," I said quietly. "If I wanted that, I'd go to the press, not to you. I'm here to protect my family's stake." I slid another document down the table. "This outlines the terms under which I will maintain my silence. Mateo resigns as CEO, effective immediately. He remains on medical leave. He sells me enough of his shares at a pre-agreed price to compensate for the years my family subsidized his false image. In return, I agree not to pursue civil action for the harm he enabled, and I do not leak these recordings." His mother called me a shameless blackmailer. One of the directors cut her off sharply. "Your son has put all of us at great risk. Ms. Lu is offering a way to contain this. You should be thanking her." Catalina pleaded with Mateo. "Shut up," he told her. The words were soft but loud enough for me. "Choose, Mateo." "What if I refuse?" he asked. "Then I go to the authorities," I said, "and press charges for the assault that caused my miscarriage and for the continued harassment from Catalina. And then I take these recordings to every investor who ever cried over your brave story." "You're bluffing," he said. "Try me," I said. He broke first. Men like him always do when the script stops. The rest of the meeting was a blur of legal language. The board voted to accept his resignation. Catalina fled the room. His mother stood frozen. "You handled this efficiently," the lawyer told me as he walked me to the elevator. "If you ever decide to return to corporate law, I'd love to make introductions." "Thank you," I said. "But I think I'm done cleaning up other people's messes for a while." Outside, the sky had cleared. The air was cool on my face. My phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. "We've just processed the transfer. The shares are now in your name. Do you still want us to set up the foundation paperwork we discussed?" "Yes," I wrote back. "Name it after the baby. Use my maiden name. Not Vargas." The real revelation wasn't that Mateo had faked being mute, but that between his silence and his lies, I had finally heard myself. Several weeks passed. Mateo moved out of the old house. The divorce became gossip in smaller circles than I expected. Catalina vanished from social media. I moved into a smaller apartment with big windows. I bought furniture that I liked. I started therapy again. The foundation paperwork arrived. My shares would fund scholarships and grants for children with chronic illnesses, and for mothers who lost pregnancies and were left without support. I went to the cemetery once. I let myself sit there and cry for a child who had only existed long enough to leave a crater in my life. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I couldn't protect you from the fall, but I'm protecting what's left of us now." I went back to school part-time studying trauma counseling. Months later, I ran into Mateo by accident. He was leaving a coffee shop near the hospital where I volunteered. "Lucia," he said quietly. "Just my name. I'm in speech therapy now," he said, hesitating. "Real therapy. The doctor told me to stop using sign language for a while to retrain my brain. Apparently, when you pretend something for that long, a part of you starts to believe it." "That sounds difficult," I said. "It is," he swallowed. "I'm not asking you to forgive me. I know I don't deserve it. I just wanted to say thank you for not destroying the company, for not sending me to prison, for forcing me to face everything. There was a time when those words would have demanded a kind response. Now they just existed like street noise. I didn't do it for you," I said. "And I didn't do it to be kind. I did it because I chose not to live the rest of my life revolving in the orbit of your worst decisions, Mateo." He nodded sadly. "I know." He glanced down at my hands. "You're not wearing the bracelet." "It broke," I said simply. "I decided to leave it that way." "I hope you find your peace," he said. I looked at him and felt nothing. Not love, not hate, just a faint pity for a man who had spent most of his life pretending to be less than he was because he was afraid of being seen for who he truly was. "I already have," I said. I stepped around him and walked away. I didn't look back. That night, the foundation director sent me an email. One of the mothers insisted I be told something. She said my story gave her the courage to leave a man who constantly told her to be quiet. I read that line 3 times. My husband's voice had been the loudest thing in my life, even when it was silent. Now when I closed my eyes, the loudest thing I heard in the quiet of my new home was my own. Tomorrow I would meet with a new group. The future no longer felt like a sentence. It felt like a door I could choose to open. And if I ever doubted, I knew exactly what to say. "No, I am not barren or useless or broken. Not anymore."